These are my assembly instructions for my 12-inch octagonal box. So I have 4 of these pieces in the file, and they are going to form the walls of my box. I've folded down for the score line for the top flaps, the score line in between my 2 panels, and the score line at the back, and the score line for the side tab. But there are also 2 score lines here, the bottom of these tabs. You're not going to fold down on those. Those are just placement lines for gluing. I'm going to fold down all score lines for all 4 of these pieces. So now that the score lines are done, I'm going to connect all of my 4 panels at the tab. So I'm using some beacon for this one instead of my usual art glitter glue or barely art glue. I want a little bit of extra wiggle room, and I'm looking for a little bit of strength on this project. I'm just applying glue to that tab. So I've got the right side of my panels down on the mat. So I'm looking at the underside of my panels, and I am just lining them up, gluing them down. So if I flip my piece over, I want the cut edge of this panel to be right against the score line of my tab. You want to line up the score lines on the top and on the bottom as well. So I'm just connecting the 4 panels at the tab to make one long strip. So I'm making sure that the score lines are even at the top and at the bottom, and the score line of my tab is right up against the edge, the cut piece of my panel. And then I'm going to fold it over and just make sure that everything is nice and even on the fold line. So now I'm going to add my reinforcement pieces. So I've cut these pieces out of white craft board, and I just want to glue them down within the score lines. Now I'm going to do only 7 of them. I'm going to leave the last panel, the one that doesn't have a tab on it. I'm going to leave that last panel blank for now. So I've joined all the panels. I have reinforced them with some craft board. Now I'm going to flip my piece over. So I have 8 of these decorative pieces, and I'm going to glue them to the center of each of my panels. So not only is this decorative, but it also adds a little bit of strength to my walls. So I've embossed these panels using an embossing folder, and I put them through my embossing machine. So this was not something that was done on my Cricut machine. So I'm just going to adhere all 8 of these panels onto the sides of my wall, trying to maintain an even border all the way around. So now that I've decorated the outer panels, and I'm going to glue down these upper flaps, I'm going to only do 7 of them. I'm not gluing down the flap on the very last one, the one that has no tab on it and doesn't have that panel reinforced. So I'm just putting glue all over that upper flap. And then I'm just gluing it down like so. Now if you want, you can cut another decorative piece that would be the same size as your craft board and put it over each panel. So that would require 8 more of these rectangles in your decorative paper. Once you've glued this down, you would glue them on top. So I'm just going to continue doing all 7 of those flaps. So now I want to join that last panel to the tab. So I'm just putting glue along the tab. I'm going to lay it flat. I'm bringing the other end over. I'm just making sure that the top and the bottom score lines are even, and that my cut line is right up against that score line. And then I have that one unfinished panel. So now that my seam is done, I'm going to glue in my piece of craft board down on that panel, and then I'm going to glue the flap down on it. So now I'm going to flip my box over. So I have these triangular score lines. Switch to my art glitter glue just because I wanted the precision of this bottle. Glue all over that triangle, and then I want the cut edge of its neighboring panel to be right up against that score line. So I'm going to do this for all 8 sides. So this piece is an octagon with little tabs on it. Now I don't want to fold down these tabs. All I'm going to do is I'm going to put glue from the score line to the edge of all of these tabs. I'm going to flip my box over, and I'm going to position my piece so that it covers that opening completely. And I'm going to turn my piece around, and I'm just going to spread all that glue. At this point, if all you were looking for was just a simple box, this would do. I need my box to be a little sturdier than this. So I have these 2 pieces of craft board that fit the bottom of my box. I'm just gonna glue it down using my beacon glue. I have 2 other panels that are the same color as the perimeter of my box, and I'm just going to glue them down, but I want the seam to be perpendicular to the previous seam. My craft board panels are in that direction, and I'm going to put my cardstock panel in the opposite direction, like so. And I'm just going to glue them down like that. So now I'm going to cover the bottom, and I have another piece of cardstock that I'm going to just glue onto the bottom of my box. So that's the bottom of my box, just waiting for its lid. So now we're going to assemble the lid. Now the lid is very, very similar to the base. There are 4 panels that look like these 2. So you want to pull down on the horizontal score line, the score line in the center, and then the score line that forms the tab at the end. There are triangular score lines on 2 of the flaps as well, but you don't want to fold on those at all. So I'm going to fold down on all those score lines for my 4 pieces. So next I'm joining these 4 panels, much like I did for the bottom of my box. So I'm putting glue all over that side tab. I'm joining my next piece to the tab. I'm making sure that the cut edge is right up against that score line on the tab and that those 2 score lines are straight. So I'm doing that 3 times. So I've flipped my piece over and I'm looking at the interior of my lid pieces. So the flaps at the bottom have a very pronounced triangle, and the flaps at the top have a tiny triangle. So these are the ones that we're going to fold down to reinforce our lid. At this point, you could also cut a smaller rectangle and put it inside your lid piece to make it strong as well. But I'm not doing that with this one. So I'm just covering that flap with glue and folding it inwards. And I'm going to do that with all sides, with the exception of the last one, the one that has no tab on the side. I'm going to leave that flap upwards for now. So now that I've glued all those flaps down, I'm going to put glue on that last tab. I'm laying it flat on my piece, and then I'm folding the other end over. And I want the cut edge to be right on the score line of my tab. And my score line at the bottom is nice and even as well. And I'm just going to put glue on that final flap and fold it inwards. So now I have all those flaps from the lid. I'm going to take our glitter glue just like I did for the bottom of my box, putting glue on the scored triangle, so from that scored line right to the edge, and I'm joining the panel right next to it. The cut edge of this piece is right on the score line of that triangle. I'm just doing that for all 8 of them. So now that I've assembled my top, I'm going to take this octagon piece with all the little tabs around it. I'm not folding down on those tabs. I'm just putting glue from the score line to the edge, all the way around on all 8 of them. And then I'm going to flip my piece around and position it. And what I'm doing is I'm looking at the corners and I'm making sure that those corners are covered. So now, just like for my bottom piece, I'm going to reinforce my lid of my 2 pieces of craft board. I'm going to glue them in, and then I have my 2 pieces of cardstock, and I'm going to be gluing them down in the opposite direction. So my craft board goes in this direction, my cardstock goes in that direction. And then I have my decorative pieces for the interior. I have my decorative pieces for the exterior. So I'm just going to glue all of that down. So now I've glued in the top decorative piece and the bottom decorative piece, and I'm bringing my base back in and just putting my lid on top like so. So you can see on my craft mat, oh, you know what? So as you can see, 12 inches. Well, the lid's a little bit bigger than 12 inches so that it fit, but it's the 12-inch octagonal box.